Yeah. Ben Espinosa from the Department of Cultural Affairs, City of Los Angeles. I work in the Grants Division. I'm accompanied here by my colleague, Brenda Slaughter Reynolds. Pardon me, Brenda Slaughter Reynolds. We are thrilled to be here spending the afternoon with you to talk about our Artists in Residence, our AIR grant program. Just a preview of what's to come over the next 45 minutes to an hour. Brenda will lead the first half by discussing the details about the AIR program, eligibility, program expectations, program structure, and so forth. We'll pause for questions that might come in, a little bit more of that in a second. And then we'll conclude the webinar with a deep dive into what the application process and experience looks like using our Fluid Review application platform. Regarding questions, neither Brenda nor I can hear you. However, we do invite them, and you can submit those questions to us by using the tool on the GoToWebinar's the window there in the upper right-hand corner. You can type in questions. One of us will be reviewing them, and then we'll collect them. And then when we get to a good point in our presentation, we'll stop, pause, and address them. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Brenda, who will talk to us about the AIR program.
Thanks, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. So first, I'm going to give you an overview of the Artists in Residence program. I'm going to detail out some pertinent information. Then I'm going to hand the webinar back to Ben, who's going to walk you through each component of the Fluid Review application. So let's begin. So what is our Artists in Residence program? This is a residency program that supports artists, providing community-based participatory projects in self-selected non-arts venues throughout the city of Los Angeles. And this is in order to gather, connect, and inspire audiences with underserved or little exposure to the arts and cultural opportunities available to other residents. Residency projects are going to engage the participants in a series of artist-led workshops that are highly participatory and/or educational, and which match the thoughtful and meaningful exchanges with the appropriate audiences at host organizations in each council district. DCA will provide AIR grants for up to 30 separate teaching artists. 15 of those grants are going to be approximately $12,000 and will be awarded for residencies of up to 12 workshops and at least one culminating event. And then 15 additional grants of approximately $6,000 will be awarded for residencies of up to 6 workshops with at least one culminating event. These grants and the grant amounts are always, of course, contingent upon the DCA's budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So DCA will also be awarding 4 to 6 additional $12,000 grants, which are funded by the NAA, and that's going to support collaborations between social justice organizations and teaching artists in South LA. The entire AIR program services will take place between July 1st of 2020 and June 30th of 2021. Some of the goals of the AIR program are to supply creative resources to these underserved communities by providing direct, intimate access to these contemporary artists, their ideas, their creative and innovative services. And so the DCA is going to support the implementation of these educational and participatory arts residencies by awarding these residencies to a spectrum of the city's most qualified teaching artists. So one of our goals also is to provide host organizations that have little or no arts programming with opportunities to test or develop new services so that they can possibly envision the integration of either an artist employee or a new branch of programs to add into its services. So let's go on and see what these funds are used for. So these residency funds are used for community projects, and they are to be held in publicly accessible facilities. Now, we understand and we make exceptions for special permission for limited access venues such as domestic violence shelters, juvenile detention camps, and the like. These funds are also to be used for sustainable activities guided by your strong artistic vision, your purpose or theme. Your projects are going to be those that emphasize the creative process, community participation, and result in at least one low cost or free presentation. And that for us is quite important, to be free and open to the public. Your funds would also be used for projects that emphasize the creative process and a connection between creative thinking and skill building within cultural issues and impacts, which enable participants to understand your art form involved and to develop their creativity through it. So one note here is that residency projects may incorporate a curriculum-based teaching, and they may also be organized as a peer-to-peer exchange with a number of mature artists focusing their work on a specific theme with the goal of presenting one collective project to the public. This would be, for example, a group of published poets who are seeking out to create poetry in the neighborhood for a specific organization or on a specific theme. So let's go over some things that the funds cannot be used for. AIR residency funds cannot support individuals who live outside of Los Angeles County, individuals enrolled in a degree or certificate program during the grant cycle, can't be used by past grantees who have not successfully completed their DCA contracts within the past 2 years, or for applicants whose past or current development is chiefly affiliated with one or more nonprofit organizations that provide the same or similar community services, unless that applicant is applying under the AIR-SJ category. In addition, just of note, the DCA does not fund events that are closed to the general public, again, with the exception of special populations and prior permission to do that with the special populations. The DCA will not fund the purchase of any of your depreciable assets. Understandably, individual artists must have equipment and supplies. However, the purchase of these would not be permissible. However, some items that are rented may be permissible, so please be sure and call us if you have questions. We do not fund cash prizes. The DCA does not fund competitions or awards. This program is meant to be inclusive and not a program that starts out with 20 participants and 5 participants get to be in the culminating performance. We expect to see 20 participants in the culminating performance. We also, as the Department of Cultural Affairs, we do not fund hospitality or food, travel, or accommodations. And so unless the food is of a cultural nature and instrumental to the programming, it would not be allowed to be used as a reimbursable expense. Also, the DCA does not fund projects that are primarily religious in nature, unless, of course, the case is made that it's multi-denominational or that there are other issues that necessitate religion not be a part of it. The DCA does not fund projects at public schools that don't include at least 14 hours of workshops and one after-school or evening assembly to which the public is invited. Just wanted to point those out because I know very often there are lots of questions, and this would also be very advisable to review because your budget proposal will necessarily include some of these items, but you should be sure to not include them in the DCA portion. Now let's move on to some eligibility. Who is eligible for this grant? We have individual artists. These can be collaborative duos, teams, ensembles under the leadership of a single applicant. And these are individual artists whose primarily are community-based and have largely been self-developed and remain primarily self-directed. For AIRSJ residencies, the applicants can be individual artists, or they may be a prominent employee of their nonprofit organization using those methodologies they've learned at their nonprofit to offer this services outside of their nonprofit job in order to perform the independent residency. Eligible individual artists are current residents of Los Angeles County, and they must demonstrate through their resumes at least 2 years of experience instructing participants in these proposed artistic disciplines within the projects at their non-arts venues, which include public schools, parks, libraries, or similar community centers. Eligible artists also will propose a residency involving a relationship with one non-arts host organization to take place at the host organization's location or another non-arts venue. And eligible artists will propose feasible projects that can be consistently attended by approximately 20 individuals for each workshop. And these host organization relationships are quite important, and as individual artists with community-based practices, we want you to be able to approach a host organization on your own and understand that your services can be contained within that venue and that you will receive assistance from your host organization. Your host organization site should have shared goals with your project, and the venue should commit to donating time and space to your project and provide safe services in a site that is hopefully ADA compliant and accessible to the public. Now, your host venue should also understand how to best coordinate a program that'll be attended by recruited individuals and other community members, so that if the site has a sign-in procedure or limited access, you may want to consider all those factors when approaching a host venue in order to help your residency program thrive. So some thoughts on where to go for your residencies would be non-arts venues such as social service centers, senior centers, social benefit agencies, community centers, recreation facilities, libraries, youth centers, rehabilitation centers, family resource centers, healthcare facilities, hotels, malls, business centers, science and research facilities, transit centers, faith-based organizations where the project is not religious in nature. So really secondary would be a DCA facility or a school, so that this program primarily is focused on providing art services to underserved populations at non-arts venues. And to that, the DCA intends to spread this artist in residency throughout all 15 council districts. That leads to some demographic and scoring and distribution issues let's discuss. So DCA's residency program strives for equitable distribution of artistic services to all 15 city council districts. So when judging the demographic access, panelists are instructed to greatly incentivize services in council districts 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and or 12, which have historically been arts underserved, and mildly incentivized services in council districts 2, 5, 10, 11, and or 15, which have historically been mildly underserved. To that point, for instance, if you were going to a social service center in Council District 8, you may want to inquire about their social justice activities and decide if you would apply as a social justice artist in residence. or if you would apply as a South LA for Council District 8. Because then what will happen is applicants' ranking for funding is based on their panel score and their council districts to be served. So in multiple cases each cycle, selected grantees may be asked to move their project to another council, and you may also indicate your second choice on your application. AIR social justice residencies are limited to council districts 8, 9, 10, and 15, which would be south of the 10 freeway and north of 228th Street. So something to keep in mind when you're proposing your artisan residency is your location, and to that, your host venue in that location. Let's now talk about the application components. I'm going to do a quick overview, and then I'm going to show you where the application can be accessed, and then hand this over to Ben. So quickly, your application components comprise your cover sheet with all your contact information. It's going to have your project narrative on there. This is your planning, your research. It's going to involve the timeline of your project. You're going to need to provide a current chronological resume, and if applicable, the collaborating artist resume as well. Very important to include all resumes for all personnel involved, and to make sure that it highlights the expertise and is chronological. You're also going to need to provide an estimated project budget, and I touched upon this earlier when I was pointing out things that the DCA does not fund. So please be cognizant of your budgeting, and feel free to call us if you have any questions about that. Also important is going to be your host organization letter. Now, this is your venue. This is your partner and your site. So this would be a letter from the organization, and it would be describing the nature of the work and the relationship. Also, you will need to provide artistic work samples, and Ben will further detail out those specifics. In addition, you're going to upload supplemental materials, and these will be what we call outside voices. These will also be any sort of review or letters of recommendation. So let's talk about your timeline. So first, register for Fluid Review, which is our online platform for the applications. If you haven't already done so or don't already have an account, go ahead and do that as soon as possible. You're going to fill out and submit your application online through Fluid Review, and that is due to us by midnight on October 25th. Third part is you're going to print it out, and you're going to mail it to our offices by the following Wednesday, October 30th. If that's not possible, you're free to drop it off in person, and that has to be no later than November 1st and during our regular business office hours. So the grant cycle is going to encompass quite a long time, so please keep in mind that you're applying for this workshop very far in advance, so that your proposed services will not start until the summer of 2020. Notification you'll see comes in May or June, and that is because we coordinate our budget with the city budget, and so it takes some time to get the city budget passed, and after that happens, we can then allocate grant awards. So for further information, please do go to our website, dcaredesign.org/AIR/DCA grants program. So you'll see here I've circled the website address as well as the applying tab. On each of those tabs on the salmon bar, you'll have a drop-down menu, and that's going to further detail information on this AIR program. And so now, since you're ready to apply, I am going to hand this webinar over to my colleague, Ben Espinosa.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. 1 second. Thank you for that overview of our Arr program. So on my screen right now is that very same page that Brenda referenced earlier. I want to pause for a quick second to see if there are any immediate questions we can address regarding the program itself, its structure, expectations. Not seeing anything coming in yet, which suggests maybe we're providing excellent, thorough information. If not, do hold on to your thoughts and do continue to welcome them. Feel free to type it in and we'll pause again later to address them. So on this page, on the main page, if you click on the Applying tab and click on Submit Proposal, it'll provide a link to Fluid Review, which again is the platform that DCA uses for submission of applications and for their review. So if you click on that, it'll take you to the Fluid Review main page. And I happen to be logged in right now. So let me show you what it looks like if I'm not logged in. This is the main page of Fluid Review on the DCA side. So if you've never been to the Fluid Review before, you've never applied for an AIR grant with DCA, the very first thing you're going to want to do is to create an account. And you can do that by going to this section here and clicking on the Sign Up button. It'll ask you for some basic contact information, such as your email address and so forth. And once you have your login, you can go ahead and enter your sign-in information. And one of the first places it's going to take you is to your dashboard, where on the uppermost part of that dashboard, you'll see your profile. Step number 1 after creating an account is to fill out your profile. And to have a sense of what information that entails, we can take a quick peek at my profile. It's a place where you'll put your full legal name. If you have a professional name that you prefer to go by, this is where you put it here in the DBA field. Basic contact information, phone number, and email address, and the website. A BAVN ID number is short for the City of LA's Business Assistance Virtual Network number. It's a platform used by the city to track and maintain relationships with a variety of city contractors and vendors, as well as individuals. The BTRC number is a business tax registration certificate number, yet another system the city uses to track relationships with vendors and contractors across the city. If you've applied for a grant and have received a grant in the past, you should have these in hand. If these weird letters look weird and are foreign to you, not a problem. You can keep these fields blank for now. They become important down the road if you get to the steps involving contracting with the city. If you have it, do provide it. It's helpful for us on our end. The next sections include a mailing address, remittance address where you'd like any hard copy documentation, communications to be sent. Physical address is the address we're going to be looking at when establishing your residency eligibility within the County of Los Angeles. So make sure that your address here reflects that. So you can ensure your eligibility to submit an AIR grant. Once you create a profile and you click on the green Save and Exit button, it'll take you back to your dashboard. This button will be green, indicating that your profile has been completed. Scrolling further down on your dashboard, you'll see a list of all your grants. So if you've applied for grants in the past, you might see them listed here. We are, of course, in the brand new application cycle, so the very first step to do if you haven't started an application yet is to add an application under your grants listing. And to do that, you would click on the View Grants button down here first, this green button. You'll see a list of all our open grant programs right now. You'll see the Artist in Residence program listed there. You're going to click on this, and if I didn't already start one, you'd have a green button here to view or add grant. But I've already added it to my list, so I can't add another one. But once you've added it, it'll show up on your dashboard. And you'll know it's a current one because it'll be denoted with a fiscal year 2020-21. That's our current application cycle. Once it's on here on this list, if you click on the highlighted GA number, it's a unique identifier for your application, it'll take you to the application itself. And we can think of this page as your task list for your current application in the Artist in Residence Fiscal 2021 program. So Brenda alluded earlier to the main components of it. So we can take a quick peek at what that looks like. We're going to go spend some time on each one of these. The first part important part is the application form itself. Three main components: a cover page, a discussion about your project and host venue, and a series of narrative/essay responses where you get to talk about the project, yourself, and your goals for the work. Before we jump in, it's helpful to know that we have a copy of what those essay narrative questions look like in the preview mode here as in a file that you can download as a Microsoft Word file. You can take a peek at what that looks like. This is handy because it's helpful to prepare all these responses in advance so that you can utilize the various copy editing tools you can find in Microsoft Word, like word count, spell check, grammar check, and all of that good stuff. So here's a preview of all those narrative responses that we're going to jump into in a second, including the word limits. So could be a good idea to prepare these responses in advance so that you'll have it at the ready by the time you're back in Fluid Review. So let's jump into what that looks like. So in the application form itself, three main sections, as we mentioned earlier. The first page has basic information about you and your contact information. Sometimes Fluid Review, in its attempt to transfer information from your profile into the application form, there's this weird bug where these weird characters can pop up once in a while. Don't worry, just go ahead and delete that and enter the correct information. Okay. Residential information versus mailing address. Again, ensure that this is showing a LA County residence because that's an eligibility requirement. And web address. We talked about BAVN information as well. The next question is asking, is geographical in nature. If you are within the city of Los Angeles boundaries, you will mark one of 15 council districts where you are located. And so if you don't know that information offhand, you can always launch the City of LA's neighborhood info tool where you can enter an address and ask it to share with you a variety of information, including which LA City Council district you're located in. That address I typed in, 201 North Figueroa, happens to be in District 14, City Council District 14. And that would be the radio button I would select here. If you're located in LA County but not in the city of LA, you can certainly enter that here instead of selecting one of the 15 buttons. Places like Altadena, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, all will be entered here. Next question is asking about where your project is going to take place. In other words, where your host organization is located. And so the requirement here is that it takes place within the city of Los Angeles. And as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be one of 15 council districts. And again, if you're not sure where your host organization is located in the city of LA, you can type in their address using that neighborhood tool we just looked at. The next question is asking whether or not you're pursuing the social justice designation as an AIR grant. And as Brenda mentioned earlier, for it to qualify for the AIR-SJ pilot, it should take place in South Los Angeles, specifically Council Districts 8, 9, 10, or 15, south of the 10 and north of 228th Street. For more information about AIR-SJ, I would recommend going back to the program guidelines. Let me just show you where that is located. And you can read about the perks of participating in the AIR-SJ pilot by reading this intro message from our grants director, Joe Smoke. He mentions it here, as well as delving into the preparation framework section where it talks about AIR-SJ. It's an exciting initiative. It's a pretty neat partnership that city is engaged in with the National Endowment for the Arts, and where possible, we encourage our applicants to consider it as they're putting together a proposal with us. So as Brenda mentioned earlier, geography plays a big role in our selection of projects under the AIR program. Ideally, the ideal scenario is that we would have 30 grantees, generally split evenly, such that there are about 2 projects in each of the 15 council districts. Because all our submissions are reviewed by the same panel, it's quite possible you score high and are fundable, but not as high as someone else who is preferring to work in your desired council district. So it's in your interest to share with DCA a second and third choice of where your project might take place. In the event that you score a fundable score, but it isn't high enough to get your first choice of location, DCI grant staff will reach out to you and see if you would be able to replicate that in either your second or third choice location, and still receive funding through the AIR program. So a second or third choice is not required, but it's strongly encouraged because it's in your interest to do so. Okay, so that concludes the first page of the application form. The second page of the application form has additional basic information about your proposed work. This is where you get to give it a project title, a start and end date. And as a reminder, we're working very much in advance here. Projects can't start any sooner than July 1, 2020 to be completed by June 30, 2021. The name of your host venue, partnering organization here. And here's an interesting thing about insurance, and another reason why it's great to be very thoughtful about what type of organizations you work with. In the strongest partnerships and relationships between our individual artists and our host organizations, some of the perks that can come up in the good partnership is that an organization would be happy to add you to their insurance, that thereby saving you the need to fulfill the city's general liability insurance as a grantee. So in your conversations with potential host venues and partners, do bring up the topic of insurance, as it could be something that they can take care of for you, since you will be in their facilities serving their population. Host venue address, and give us an estimate on when you think your culminating event is to take place. As Brenda mentioned earlier, our AIR projects, they generally span around 6 weeks or so, followed by a culminating event, or up to 12 weeks followed by a culminating event. So as you're sketching out a potential schedule of a project, give us an estimate when you think the final event will take place. Those are the events that DCI grant staff would work very hard to attend, so that we can see your work in action. Number of artists involved in your project, that will always be at least one, because that will be you, the applicant, as well as you'll also want to add any account for any other additional artists that would be involved. For example, if you're doing a 10-week series and every other week you bring in a guest artist or accompanist to support your arts or your music workshop, that would be an area where you can account for additional artists who are involved. Number of participants served by the project. As Brenda mentioned, we have a minimum participant engagement expectation with our AIR projects. Our goal is that the projects that we fund will have multi-week residencies that can be consistently attended by approximately 20 folks. We're messaging this a little bit differently this year and in prior years, if for those folks who applied in the past. The ideal scenario for us is that we want folks to enroll in your workshop series and be a regular participant throughout the project period. We are using the word approximately because we know there are challenges around ensuring consistent attendance. But the goal behind the idea behind this is that we find the most meaningful skill building and learning experiences through repetitive participation and a sequential learning arc. So we are really emphasizing with our applicants and our current grantees to work with their partners to ensure that there can be at least 20 consistently attending participants. So you will enter that number here. How about the number of folks you hope to serve in your work? Audience members and participants at the culminating event. Generally a much larger number because you are extending the invitation to the general public as well to the friends and family and community members of the folks that you're working with directly. This is an area where you can enter that as an estimate as well. And before proceeding with the application, we ask that we certify that the accuracy and of your application information, and that it is you submitting this on your behalf. And you get to show off your trackpad signing skills here by typing in your name, or not typing, but drawing in your name. And then that will serve as your signature for this purpose, as well as the hard copy, because we print it out as well when you print out your application. Once you've filled out this information, we'll get to the third page of the application form. And the third page is going to be the area where you get to enter all your narrative/essay responses to the application. So the first question is around telling us about the basic questions of your proposed work: the what, the where, the when, the how, and the who. So give us those basic details about where your project's going to take place. When are they going to be scheduled? Is it going to be a weekly, every other day type of series? Who are the folks that you will be working with? And give us a sense of what how the residency is conducted, like what will take place. Is it a collaborative art making session? Is it going to be that example of a convening of more mature artists who are engaged in reflecting upon their work and engaging in shared learning? So give us a nice overview of the basic, the who, what, when, where, and how of your work, proposed project. The second section is an opportunity for you to boast about yourself, your experience and expertise as a teaching artist, about your work in this particular art form, and your experience in teaching valuable skills around your art form with others. So this is where you take off any filters for being shy. This is where we want you to show off and talk about your qualifications and experience. So this is that section. Number 3 is where you get to talk about what your project will result in. Give us the desired impact of your proposed project. Give us a sense of what the pre and post looks like. Are you going to be working with a population who's had zero experience with a particular dance form, and by the end of this session, they'll all be, beginner dancers with a newfound love for dance? Or are you working with established artists who are in the early part of their career, and you're convening folks to work on new ideas that will culminate in a final presentation of even more established, mature professional work? This is where you get to talk about what does the before and after look like, and not necessarily just around the arts. We are also interested in the proposed benefits resulting in the social emotional benefits that you expect to achieve with your population. Not only are we interested in understanding what kind of impact you'd have on your proposed participants, but we're also interested in learning about how you as an artist might grow and benefit from this proposed work. This is the area where you get to tell us about that. Number 4 asks you to give us a more detailed picture about the specific persons that you're going to be working with. We are interested if this is going to be a project focused on seniors, is going to be focused on youth, an incarcerated population, maybe recent immigrants to Los Angeles. Tell us about this, what makes this group special, what their special needs might be, and how you, as the artists in residence, are equipped to serve those needs. Number 5 is where you get to tell us about any collaborating artists that you have planned to be involved in your work. Going back to the example of like a multi-week dance series, perhaps you will be working with a percussion ensemble, other musicians that you plan to bring into your workshops to be able to provide your participants, live music accompaniment experience. In which case you might be able to provide. This is where you'll give the panelists a chance to understand who those people are. Number 6 is where you get to tell us about how you're going to ensure that you'll have your consistent participants of at least 20 or approximately 20 in your work. We're interested in learning about what your plans are for this. Is it a matter of over-enrolling, like reaching out to ensure there's at least 30 folks involved and signed up for your workshop from the get-go so that we can have a higher chance of finding an approximate 20 folks who've attended consistently? Tell us about the marketing plan that you, the artists, and your partnering organization have in store for ensuring that the word gets out and that we can maximize the interest and excitement and enrollment for your work. We're also interested to understand if there are similar venues in at least 2 other city council districts where this kind of work has taken place and what kind of outreach efforts have been made there. Please do share it when you have it, if you have it, the amount of time and investment you would make toward this marketing effort. Number 7 asks you to tell us about the kind of atmosphere that you intend to execute in your workshop. We want to understand how you're going to ensure it's conducive for great cultural exploration and fun and learning. Tell us about as well how the culminating event will serve as an event that ties up the work that has happened in the prior weeks. Is it a matter of it's going to be a showcase of works that you've been working on over a multi-week period? Is it, or it could be an exhibition of visual art pieces that have been produced by your participants over the course of the week. Tell us about what that culminating event looks like and how it ties up your project. Finally, the last question is it's a question around how and what strategies you will undertake to evaluate your work. Goal being that you have a plan in place to ensure that your project is successful, not only as you carry it out, but that it can be better in subsequent years to come. We're interested in learning about your specific strategies around how you're going to do this. Is there going to be a series of surveys used, pre and post test surveys? Is there going to be a hired outside expert to come in and to talk to you and to observe and engage in the work? We're curious to see if there is any involvement from your host partnering organization in this. So this is where you get to let us know that you have a plan in place to ensure project success as the project is carried out and an opportunity to improve it in years to come. After all those narrative responses, the final question on this page asks you to sketch out a timeline of what your multi-week workshop and culminating event can look like. Give us the estimated dates and topics and objectives of each session. No need to go into terribly heavy detail here. We're looking for a literal outline, a sketch. Give us a sense of the learning arc that is to take place over a series of 6 to 8, 10 to 12, 10 to 13 weeks. And once you've completed that and you click on the Save and Exit button, you will have then completed the Artist in Residence application form portion of your application, which is the biggest portion of the application. Is this a good time to pause for any questions? Let's see if we have any questions here. Okay, no questions just yet. So again, we do welcome them. Continue to think about it if you have anything to ask. Next question asks about a budget. So in this instance, we ask our applicants to think of the most ideal scenario, in which case you would receive $12,000 to carry out a up to 12-week multi-week workshop series, plus a culminating event. So if you click on this highlighted Air budget form, it'll provide you a downloadable PDF that is fillable and is sketched out for you in a way to include the budget categories we typically see in an AIR project. You want to make an estimate for a number of weeks, how much planning time, project session time, marketing time per week, times the number of weeks you're going to do, times dollar per hour to get these amounts. For example, under artist fees and any other of these fees here. The cultural affairs requests, remember that this amount should be $12,000 for our purposes. We want you to think in the most ideal scenario where you can get a $12,000 grant. And so you want this cultural affairs request to amount to $12,000. This is not a matching grant, so you need not necessarily have anything under this donated column field, this donated column rather. But if you do have plans for contributed income or donated services and resources, this is where you'd put it. In most cases, because you're working with a host facility who's going to be contributing time, space, resources toward your work, there you would probably have values to enter here. So this is the area where you would put that. In this big narrative box here, this is an opportunity for you to provide some budget-related comments to help clarify the numbers and expenses, proposed expenses that you have sketched out up on top. Also a helpful space to type in to provide clarifying notes for any donated space and resources and expenses by sharing with the panel who in fact is going to be contributing that. Is it going to be your host organization? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be funded through another grant? This is where you get to provide that. Also in this section, you'll see a link to a sample budget. So you have an idea of what an Arr budget can look like. I'll note that this was sketched with an assumption of an $8,000 grant. As I said earlier, we want you to think of this as the optimal scenario and plan to sketch out a budget that shows 12,000 under the cultural affairs column. Of course, as with government grants, you might not always necessarily get what you request. And so, as Brenda mentioned earlier, we anticipate approximately half of our Arr grants in the next year to be $6,000 and not $12,000. So, what's nice about a type of project that is, around 10 weeks or 5 weeks, it's the presumption is that we can appropriately scale it should you be approved for a grant that is less than $12,000. So, for example, rather than proposing a 20-week session, you might be proposed, and if you receive half of a requested grant, we would then expect a 10-week session, so forth. Once you've uploaded your budget in this section, this incomplete button will turn green, and you can proceed to the next thing on your task list, which is uploading a professional resume. So in your resume, it's important that the file you upload demonstrates at least 2 years of experience doing the kind of work that you are proposing. Make sure the panelists see that there is expertise here, and not just you as an artist and in your practice, but as well as in your ability to also in your experience in teaching. So it's a combination of experience in both teaching and in your own artistic practice. Again, if collaborating artists are involved, this is where you would have an opportunity to upload their resumes as well. The next section is the host venue proposal letter. Brenda mentioned this is an important part of your application, and I want to take the opportunity to emphasize that as well. A healthy relationship with your host organization / venue can make or break an AIR project. Really think of them as a partner in the proposed AIR project, and think of them as find a way for them to be a partner through and through. We want to avoid the situation where you might be approved for a grant and then you're trying to roll it out, but then all of a sudden that the space that you thought would be available to you from your host organization is no longer available, or the participants that you were hoping that they would be able to provide for you as enrollees in your workshops are not there. So this is a conversation to have with your potential host organizations, and ask them these are the key questions that you're going to ask them about in your conversations, and they will in turn put this in a letter on their letterhead that will demonstrate their commitment toward your work if approved for a grant. So panelists are going to be looking for an alignment between their mission and their desired goals and your interests as an artist. We're interested in learning about what kind of amenities and facilities would be available to you to ensure that your project can be carried out successfully. We're curious to learn about the organization's current client demographics and about their willingness and readiness to help support you with a multi-week residency and culminating event. So this is an area where they get to talk about that. We also want to understand how your proposed project would be an incredible value add. Remember, a major goal of this grant program is to bring the arts into places where they are traditionally not available, and to inspire new groups of people and new organizations to see the value of the arts and hopefully make further investments in it. So we want to understand if there are any ongoing arts programs or cultural services happening at the facility. We want to understand how your proposed work is going to be different from that. And we want to understand the impact of your residency on that target audience. Dollars and cents contributions of the organization. We want to understand the value of the space, the facilities, maintenance, security. Again, the important question of whether or not they'd be able to add you to their insurance, any in-kind contributions, and their proposed investment in people and time is also important here. Will there be a coordinator to help you schedule the use of space? Will there be a marketing person to help get the word out about signing up for your multi-week workshop? These are all the kinds of contributions that we'd like to see in the host venue proposal letter. After uploading that letter, we will then ask you to provide some artistic work samples of your that is a good reflection of the proposed project. Remember that the artistic work samples for an artist in residence project is not samples about your own personal creations and your own portfolio and your own work. We're not interested necessarily in understanding and seeing your own personal work samples. What the purpose of this section is to better understand what the experience of your workshops are like, as well as what the culminating experience is like. So the ideal work sample here is to provide links to 3 videos or 3 videos that gives the panelists kind of like an on the ground understanding of what your workshop is like. Also know that our panelists will have read through many pages of text in their review of applications. Anything to get their eyes off the page and see an exciting video of one of your workshops in action, or the thrilling, joyous, celebratory, culminating event is a nice escape from that rhythm. So if where possible, because after all, the presumption is that you've carried out a project like this at least once or twice in the past, ideal scenario is that you'll have video footage of that happening, and it's something that you'll be able to share. If not, providing 3 links to videos, audio files, or other web-based resources, you can also provide between 5 and 10 still images. But that's reflective of your workshops in action and your culminating event in action. I think it's helpful to click through what that interface looks like, because it can be a little bit tricky. So if we're going to go the route of links, which again strongly encourage, you can provide up to 3 of them. If you're going to go the route of still images, you can provide up to 5 or 10. You can do links or images, but not both. If you go the links route, you'll have an opportunity to add the URL here. So a typical URL might go to a YouTube link, a Vimeo link, or a Dropbox link, something like that. Regardless of where the link goes to, we want to ensure that that link does not have any passwords, doesn't require any permissions or anything like that. That the goal is we want our panelists to be able to click on the link you provide and immediately see the content you'd like them to see. Also very helpful to add contextual notes here to point or curate the experience of the link for the panelists. Especially important if, let's say, you're providing a link to a 20-minute YouTube video. Do know our panelists will probably not spend more than 3 or 5 minutes per link. So in the event that you have a fantastic 20-minute video, provide like good timestamps or time markers that you'd like them to start the review at, so that way you can ensure that they're seeing exactly what you want them to see. Okay, so you can provide up to 3 links. If you go the images route, as I mentioned earlier, you can provide between 5 and 10. You provide upload your image file here, and definitely provide some contextual notes here as to what it is that the panelist is viewing. Do remember that the panelists will view your images in the order in which they're presented, so be thoughtful about the sequencing of the images that you provide if you're going to go this route. So 10 images or 3 links, and that will comprise your artistic work samples to give the panelists a taste of what your workshop feels like and what the culminating experience is like. After you complete the section around artistic work samples, we're at the home stretch, folks. We're almost there. A couple more. The next important section is the supplemental items area, where you'll have the opportunity to provide 3 very valuable files and resources that help support the value and success of your work. Important that it's very helpful for these supplemental items to reflect an outside voice. So think about like letters of recommendation, testimonials of folks who've participated in a comparable project in the past. Or if you'd like to provide a much more detailed deep dive into what the experience will be like, you can also provide a curriculum. This would be a good place to put that also. Yeah, lesson plans and curriculums are a great supplemental item if you have a letter of recommendation and testimonial. The last two sections think of them as surveys and will not be viewed by the panelists. This is meant for DCA grant staff internally only. So the first one is a form that you're going to fill out for us that gives us your estimated metrics around your project. And we're interested in understanding the number of artistic personnel as well as audience members who would be impacted by your work, and how those numbers break down by demographics, ethnicity and race, for example, age range, and so forth. We're also interested in understanding your plan for marketing your work. So that's e-blasts, websites, social media platforms. This is an area where you get to provide some numbers in terms of your proposed reach via those means. We're also always interested in understanding what impact your proposed project would have on our artistic workforce in LA. So this is an opportunity for you to provide us some estimates around that as well. And then finally, last but not least, in the application task list is a feedback survey for the grant staff. Give us candid, critical, positive feedback on what this experience was like for you. We take a look at this after every cycle to find ways around how we can make this process better for you and for us. So do complete it. We take the feedback seriously and greatly value it. Once you've completed all of these discrete sections of your task list, this red button showing prerequisites not met will disappear. This submit your application button will turn green and live. And once you click on that, you will then have successfully submitted an electronic version of your application. You will then get an automatically generated email from DCA Grants to confirm that electronic submission and outline instructions for your next steps, which is to print a hard copy of this online application and to get it to us by mail. And after that, once you've sent out the hard copy to supplement your electronic submission, that concludes your application submission to the AIR program. And after that, you'll mail it in, right, or drop it in person. I think that concludes our application submission cycle. So process. Are there any questions here we can talk about that's useful for sharing with the audience, Brenda? What do you think?
Just if your art services require specifics like a sprung dance floor or a vaulted ceiling, keep that in mind when researching your host venues. Also be aware that most places with a sprung floor may not be the first thing you think about. Many high schools have a terrific sprung floor, so don't feel that if you're doing a dance program that you immediately have to use a dance studio. Remember, at the crux of the program, we want to provide services, art services, through your workshops to communities that normally wouldn't get them. Dance studios would normally get dance workshops. So keep things like that in mind when approaching a host venue.
Great. Well, I think that concludes our webinar. We appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for spending your afternoon with Brenda and myself to talk about our AIR grant. If you have additional questions, you can always reach out to us. We are accessible to you. Here is our information. Let me go back to our website here so we can have it. We can close with that. You can find information about Brenda and myself here on the contacts page. Do reach out. Applications are due on the 25th. Good luck in the preparation of your applications. We look forward to your submission. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.